Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Legendary bassist Jerry Jemmott is today's guest. Jerry will talk about his incredible career in music as well as the many phenomenal artists he has worked with.
Two-time Grammy Award winner Jerry Jemmott, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Welcome, glad to be here, Mark. My pleasure.
So good to have you. So first question, Jerry, now that we're all squared away. Out of all the instruments, the chick magnet guitar, the drums, what led you to the bass?
Well, you know, it's a long story, and I suggest you and your readers read my memoirs called Make It Happen. And it really details all the little things I had to go through to get to that revelation. It was more of a revelation for me after a very traumatic childhood. And the only instrument that, all the instruments I heard, nothing really influenced me to want to pick up an instrument until I got hit by a car at the age of 9. And that changed my life, basically. And I heard music differently. And I told my mother at one point, I said, I was listening to Miles Davis' Around Midnight album previous to the accident, and nothing really turned me on. But after the accident, all of a sudden the bass, it's like there. So it's like, I want to do that. Simple as that.
And how old were you when you had that accident?
I was 9. I turned 10 in March, and instead of getting a bass for my birthday, I got a recorder so I can record music, and in hopes of with the plan to get a bass when I entered junior high school. And at that point, I did. My mother had saved up and got a bass for me in junior high school. She got a teacher for me, and a year later, I was working professionally, basically, after going through a summer concert series with the All Bronx Junior High School Orchestra. I rose to a level of proficiency where I became the first bassist among 3 bassists, and went on from there. I really couldn't hit a bass on the recording, so it made me work harder. And by the time fall came, I was playing with some kids and in an open forum at a boys club, and some older men heard me playing, and they invited me to join their band. And I said, well, I'm only 12 years old. And they said, well, that's all right. You know, you have to ask my mother. They drove me home, and the rest is history. I was working at that point. I began working 3 to 4 nights a week.
Well, that's incredible. And brief anecdote, I taught for over 30 years. And I know that when you teach, obviously you yourself keep learning.
Yes.
My jazz hero has always been jazz trumpeter Maynard Ferguson. Who, by the way,
that's my man. Yeah, I know Maynard.
Yeah, Maynard always mentioned Miles. And I actually hired him 2 times to perform at the school where I taught, twice over like a 6-year period. He did a clinic for the jazz band members, and they and he loved it. You seem to take tremendous pride in giving workshops and, of course, performing. You're legendary, but take it from a teacher. When I see you, you love teaching. What do you get from teaching music?
More than the student. That's why I started.
Yeah,
to learn more. And invariably, as within a lesson, I will learn more. The student's going to learn, but I will get more out of just preparing and going through it and seeing the revelation in their eyes. I get more out of it gratification than probably the student does, especially when that light goes off, when they understand that it's up to them to make it happen. The time they put in, how they put it in, having an organized platform procedure to go through on a regular basis. All these things make a difference. You make the right causes, you get the right effect. So you trust your work and you have confidence when you play.
And that's great advice and great teaching advice. But what do you do? You seem to me, you shouldn't be because of how amazing you are, but I think you believe you're still a student of the bass. What do you do to continuously hone your craft?
Oh, I challenge myself all the time. Me and my friends, we call it troubleshooting. You know, you play something, you can't have a problem playing it. Well, get into it. Look for stuff. Look for stuff you can't do. And the idea at this point in my career, as opposed to trying to play everybody else's music coming up, being able to play everybody else's music and support them, the idea for me now is to play what's in my head and just express myself and enjoy the process.
That's great, because so many people, when you think you're done, that's where the problem starts.
Oh no, you're never done. You know, this is music is something. There's always something to learn. You can learn from a baby. You can learn from anyone, not even a non-musician. You can learn from. It doesn't have to be a musician. It's about life and interpreting life through music.
You know, and it's funny you say that, because music, and we discussed this actually before the interview, it's so different, and some people don't get to see this on stage, the performing and backstage, which is where some of the other magic happens. And I told you that my cousin was very close friends, actually produced an album for blues guitarist Keb Mo. And my sons and I were lucky enough to go backstage and meet him after a show. And it was beyond cool, because you went back and you saw like 12 different guitars. And it was just as much fun as he had playing, as much fun as I'm sure you are playing. That backstage magic, like you said, you get your inspiration from preparing these lessons. Forget about the benefits you get when you actually teach these workshops, especially to young people, but the preparation. So it's easy to be starstruck for us. But what was it like talking about being starstruck for someone like you? You worked with legends such as Aretha Franklin and B.B. King. What is that like?
It's all part of the learning experience. I went into the idea of being a session musician because of my friend Richard Dubin, who was a kid I met in the All Bronx Junior High School Orchestra. We became friends, played another band called the Mixed Birds. And he would come back with these stories about the musicians he was hanging out with. Now, this cat was like 14 years old. Now, I was 14, he was 16, but he looked like he was 30. And he could talk like he was 40. So he came back with all the stories about meeting Milt Hinton, Richard Davis, George Duvivier, Clark Terry, who actually became Clark Terry's disciple, Snooky Young, Ernie Royal, all the trumpet players. He was a trumpet player. So that lit my fire to go to the next level, basically, to become a studio musician as opposed to just playing the bass. So at that point, I had no really fear about playing with anybody, because I played coming up with great musicians. As a child, I played with Eddie, across from Eddie Gomez, Larry Hall, Harry Hall, the guys from the Newport Youth Band. And so these guys were geniuses on their instruments. And I had problems hearing and remembering. So it was always a challenge for me. But I took it seriously. So I got to the point where I was making records in the studio. I felt comfortable feeling that I had one shot to record something, and there was a preparation going into rehearsing before the recording. So that lessened the pressure. So when the time I got to working with Aretha Franklin, I already recorded with Nina Simone. I recorded Aretha's sister, Irma Franklin. We got a Grammy nomination for that, Piece of My Heart. And I didn't record with Aretha until the following year. So it was really that story's in my book also. Briefly, the producer had me come in to sit and let's listen to the session. And he said, I might need you, I might not, but you're going to get paid anyway for 2 sessions. So I sat in the control room for 3 hours while they were struggling with the song. And finally at 2 o'clock, he said, go in there and see what you can do. And so I was completely at ease in terms, I know they were in trouble and they weren't playing the groove, the appropriate to the music she was playing. And I laid something down and they all jumped into it, and 2 takes later was recorded. Mm-hmm. And at that point, Tommy Cogsville, the bass player that was normally there, who had recorded all her 7, 8, 9 hits before that, he said, no, you stay here. You stay, you finish the session. So that's how that went, basically. It's just being prepared for the opportunity. And previous to that, I had gotten called that same year. That was in March. That was 10 days after Martin Luther King was killed, assassinated. Previous to that, in January, I got a call to come down to the same studio, Atlantic Records, because the bass player didn't show up for some reason. I went down there, and there was Aretha Mardine. He was the arranger, and there was Wilson Pickett, and a bunch of musicians just standing around waiting for somebody to play the bass part that was written out. So I jumped into it because I could read well. I was able to see what was going on and say where I could find out where I can do my thing, so they could make it something special, which is what you want to do to elevate the music. And it worked. The record was produced and sent to San Remo Festival, made the cut, because I had to be there within a week's time. So it's just ironic how that being ready for the opportunities that come. Somebody doesn't show up, you get in, and the rest is history.
That's incredible. And I'm so glad that that's in your memoir. But you talk about in a young age, and you were 12, and they said, we don't care how young you are, come on in. I interviewed Don Caverhill, and he played the piano for Louie Louie for the Kingsmen. He was 15. So I got to ask you the same question I asked them. What was it like for someone, a young teenager, to be in the room and performing with, at times, people 2, 3, maybe 4 times your age?
Well, I've gotten used to it. I started out that way, so it was never an issue for me. I wanted to, contribute to the music, do my part, whether it's going to play the music, play the ink. And eventually, after I started recording, people said, "Oh, don't play what's written, Jerry. Let's play what you hear in your head, basically." And so that became noted for doing that, as opposed to just reading the music. I could also improvise and come up with my own part, which is why they hired mostly jazz musicians to make records in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, basically in the studios. I come from a long tradition of jazz musicians making records in the studio.
Right, and when you talk about musicianship, I know in the Groove Master, I believe I read the foreword, and someone wrote that, what do you say about a guy like you, Jerry Jemmott, who always shows up? And they don't mean like, oh, look, he's there. You show up with that bass and you do your Jerry thing. So that's incredible to have that kind of reputation. I mean, who would not show up to a gig? But the way you show up and the professionalism, you showed up with at 12. Some people don't show up with at 42. So it's really incredible. But I have to tell you, I was in the high school band. Don't be jealous. I played the clarinet. I was good, but not exactly the chick magnet that one would hope. But
I love the lick of the stick.
Yes, I was in the jazz band and played the saxophone. That was a little bit better, but loved it. But I don't remember who said it, but someone was like, what's this bass guy doing? Like, do we really need, we had a great band director, Fred Krell. And then, Mr. Krell, what do we need the bass guy for? He said, oh, what do we need him for? No problem. Said to one saxophone player, stop playing. We all played a song, no difference. He said to the bass player, stop playing. And something was missing. Something was definitely missing. But because people, especially young people, are so interested in and only know about the melody, they just don't know when you lay down that bass how powerful it is. So what do you feel? I mean, you really are, it's the drummer and certainly the bass. You're like the driving force behind that band. How do you handle that awesome responsibility?
Well, with care. Realize it is. And ironically, that's the reason why I chose the bass, because I really couldn't hear. And Paul Chambers was the bass player with Miles Davis at the time. And it's his playing, the way he played the bass, the way he interpreted the music, the way he sparked the music, the way he would change the groove. It just caught my ear and said, this is what the bass is supposed to do. So I got that. That was the initial idea of playing the bass is because of the responsibility of the bass. I recognize the fact. But the fact that I couldn't hear it that well gave me freedom to be free and not be intimidated by what I didn't know. So that ignorance really propelled my creativity. As it paid off when I switched from acoustic bass to electric bass, I was able to hear much better. I said, wow, I can really hear the notes now. And it's consistent all the time. So I put more time into it, and I realized it was an instrument that can really change music and really have more impact on it. So I approach it that way. And the responsibility of making the music, however, it's you want to bring it to life. And every musician, as an accompanist, that's our goal, to bring that music to life, to make that music pop off the page and come into your ears, come into your heart and soul. And only a human being can do that. Well
said. Such great advice. And What a great philosophy. I want to talk about your many books, Groove Master, plus you have a lot of musical theory books. What made you decide to say, hey, I love playing, but now I want to do something in addition to that? It's going to still be music, but it's going to be writing. What made you do that? What was the impetus for that?
Well, the recognition, another car accident. Richard Davis, who was my friend from working in the studio, I came out of the car accident. It was nearly fatal in 1971. And I had lost a lot of my mental faculties. I was really a basket case. He told me to start chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And I started chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I converted to being a true Buddhist in 1974. And I'm still having problems. I still couldn't get it together. And he said, okay, Jerry, if you want to get it together, I said, I lost contact with what I thought I knew. I didn't know that much. Okay. I knew how to feel. I knew how to play music. But as far as the theoretical aspect, I had a very, very minor understanding of it. So I got deep into teaching, and in that part, I started really understanding theory, and I started writing about it, a simple way to get into it, basically. For someone who maybe had disabilities, who couldn't get it from the normal way of reading a book, I focused on making it accessible to everyone. So I leveled the playing field, so how I could pick up the book and start understanding what they were hearing. It's for enjoyment. I don't know how far they want to take it, but the information is there in an accessible English version, reader-friendly synopsis of learning music. So that was my driving force. And I was helping myself at the same time. In fact, the first book I wrote saved my life. I was in a bad situation, and it was like medicine, for therapy for me to start writing everything I knew, because I thought I was going to be dead the next year. The truth is, so that's the life I was living at the time. And all that's documented in my book. But just for the sake of your listeners now, you have to get the passion, the fire, the commitment, the physical knowledge, the physical endurance, mental fortitude. These are the things that make music real for you, and that you can actually sustain it. And so I put that in my books, and hopefully that it's been of service. People seem to enjoy them. They get a lot out of them, and I get more out of it knowing that it works. The light bulb goes off when somebody understands what they're doing. It's a completely different experience.
Exactly. That's a wonderful outlook and philosophy to have. On my show, Jerry, I always like to talk about the story behind the glory. So we're hearing a lot of wonderful things, and I know it wasn't easy, but it almost sounds easy. So what struggles did you have as an aspiring musician on your way to success?
Well, basically memory, being able to not hear. I have a lack of all the knowledge. I have to sometimes take a second take. I get anxious. All these things that you have to overcome through looking back and trusting what I've done previously. I trust my training. I trust the work I put in, basically. But there are always going to be challenges and always something to learn. I get on a session and I have to basically, some guys come and they'll play the licks they practice at home. But I like to make up something that's appropriate for right then, right now. And so I was working with Grady Tate.
That sounds like too much pressure to me.
Grady Tate noticed that when working with him, we would do a lot of jingles for Grant and Murtaugh back in the 70s. They hire all the jazz musicians. They hire Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, Bob James, Eric Gale, Silky Young, Joe Newman, you name it, all the great saxophonists. They had all the great musicians, the great drummers, Herb Lavelle, Grady Tate, Ed Shaughnessy. So these are the guys I would play with at least once a week on a daily basis. And Grady said, you don't come in here prepared to play anything special. You just make up the shit on the spot. I said, that's what I'm supposed to do. That was my ignorance about, knowing everything. I played whatever I had in my pocket, whatever I can come up with appropriate for the music at that time. If I see something on the paper, I might want to change it. I do it then. But it comes from the previous knowing my instrument and having desire to make music better all the time.
Right. Well, it's just a constantly learning and teaching and learning.
Oh, yes.
It's really outstanding.
Never finish.
Right. So talking about never finishing, what is next for Jerry Jemmott?
Well, I'm working right now in my office. I have a setup to do this 1 minute bass for this my partner in Portugal. And we plan to do these series of bass instruction on this 1 minute bass platform. And I'm going to basically go through the chapters in my book, The Bass in You, explain some of the things that need explained and demonstrate basically. My thing is I reveal, I explain, and I demonstrate. So I think red.
Yep, exactly. I was just thinking that acronym. I said, I got a great acronym for you, but you have it already.
Right. Oh, I got some acronyms, boy. In fact, the first one I'm doing is Fade Strip. Fade Strip is all the things you need to know in terms of feeling, approach, direction, effects, style, technique, reason why you're making the music, the relationship to the music, your imagination, inspiration, patterns, and phrasing. These are the things that we incorporate in our music. Milliseconds, basically. We don't have to think about it. But knowing that they're there, you can say, oh, I can play a pickup now. Or maybe a lead-in. Or maybe a fill. Maybe my dynamics, I'll play soft. The things will change the rhythmic pattern. I'll play it starting on the second beat instead of the first beat and see what happens. All these things emerge as a result if you know they're there. And you already have them. It's about having access to them. Because like I always say, knowledge is useless if you can't use it.
Brilliant. I love it. A lot of this is second nature to you now, but always wasn't. But some great, liquid gold advice from you. So Jerry Jemmott, I can't thank you enough for joining us today, sharing your awesome experiences as a musician. And to me, more importantly, equally as important as a teacher. To the viewers, don't forget to watch us on E360 TV, available on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. EST, available on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Remember to follow us on social media. Life Stories with Marc Hoberman is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, our YouTube channel. Jerry Jemmott, thank you so much for being here today.
Mark, thank you for your work. You're doing a great job, and you know how to get the message out there. I love it.
Thanks so much, bud. Thank you.
All right, baby. Peace.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.